Greetings, welcome to the Power of Vintage. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than normal videos. I typically try to have a relatively singular theme. Today's video is going to be a mishmash of a couple different things. Let's get to it. Alright, so I still have a number of Atari STs waiting on refurbishment, so I had to pick up some supplies. We have two Meanwhile power supplies, we have a couple of Gotecs here, and a few other just miscellaneous, DuPont connectors and such. Just some random stuff that I needed in order to progress further on getting the rest of those built. Or finalized, ready to find new homes, right? So the first three, I've already found new homes. I have a video on number one, a video on number two. Number three was really simple. It was wiring up the power supply, wiring up the Gotec, and programming the Gotec. You've already seen that if you watched any of these videos on these refurbishments. This is nothing new here, right? So, to be frank, the rest of them are probably going to be mostly like that as well. There is one that's a little more special, and we'll talk about that one a little bit later on. But this one is also special for a different reason. This guy here, this 1040 ST, I had reached out to a fellow YouTuber who has been an inspiration to me from a soldering perspective. I ran into him at VCF Midwest and said, hey, you know what, I've got a number of Atari STs. Would you be interested in one? He does a lot of Macintosh soldering. It's Steve at Mac84. Really, really nice, friendly guy. I wanted to send him an Atari ST and spread the Atari love and get more folks kind of enjoying this and seeing a 68,000 CPU cousin, sibling, whatever you want to call it, versus the Macintoshes of that era. So what we got here is we have just a lovely 1040 ST. It's got the TOS 1.04, the upgraded TOS. It has a new power supply, a Meanwhile power supply. It has the lovely Gotec with the OLED screen, the rotary encoder for selecting, a flash drive with a whole slew of old stuff, disk images on it, both games, demos, and applications. I don't know if that's a both. Including games, demos, and applications. If it was both, I think both just means two. All right, but whatever. So that's that there. We got a lovely mouse. We have a VGA, ST to VGA adapter. And then I have the lovely MT32 Pi hat. I got a bunch of circuit boards. I built up the rest. I have a few extra. I figured I'd throw that in. It's just so that he has an opportunity to see what the MIDI ports could do. At least some examples of the amazingness of the MIDI ports on the Atari ST. What made this a little more special? What else have I got here? I got a few more things. You can't get enough Raspberry Pis. This is a Pi 02W. I don't know if the numbers are in the right order, but it's a great one. It works for the Pi hats. It also works for Pi Storm, which I have one of those as well. I might be playing around with it a little more. Who knows? We'll see. In addition, to go along with, I've tried a bunch of the various different hard drive emulators for the Atari ST. My favorite right now, based upon those that I've worked on before in the past, is truly the Ultra Satan. The Ultra Satan is extremely flexible, extremely compatible, fast enough. I mean, I'm not doing any data transfer speeds because, to be frank, it's all slow. It's faster slow or slower slow. I'm not too into benchmarking the hard drive transfer speeds, but this is a really cool one. This is ACSI2STM, and this is a really great little motherboard or circuit board here, right? You have 3 SD card slots. You have a battery backup so that you can actually have a clock, drive a clock on your Atari ST, which is really kind of cool because a lot of the basic Atari STs do not have a real-time clock, a battery backed up real-time clock. So that's super cool. In addition, and something that's been really kind of fun, and I'll kind of walk through a little bit this later, but most hard disk emulators that you have for an Atari ST require a driver to be booted up or to be installed on the SD card needs to be partitioned in some sort of Atari compatible format, either using the PPARA driver, HD driver, ICD driver, AHI, HDI, Atari hard disk, something, whatever, the old school kind, and in many instances, that makes it may be compatible with your PC, it may not be, but you also are limited in the size of those partitions. This guy gets around some of that. It introduces some compatibility issues potentially, but you can just stick in a PC formatted SD card in this guy, 32 gigabytes, copy stuff onto it full speed, boot up your Atari ST with it plugged in, and you can access the stuff. That is so super cool. I mean, if I didn't already have the Ultra Satans, I mean, I love the Ultra Satan. This is probably my next best favorite one. Yes, it introduced some compatibility issues. Yes, if you really want to use these to the best of their ability, you'll want to get an Atari hard disk driver. But for someone who's just starting out and wants to get a bunch of software on their Atari ST quickly, this is really, really awesome. It's fantastic. So I can't recommend these things enough, and they're relatively inexpensive. So I have two of them here. This one is going to be going out and sold with the Mega ST that I've been working on. It's a great little guy, and I think it goes well with the Mega ST with the 4 megabytes of RAM. Having more RAM actually helps with any sort of hard disk driver, a hard disk for an Atari ST. 1 megabyte is typically a little on the lower side. That's that there. Let's get to kind of doing a walk around on Steve's, soon to be Steve's, Atari 1040 ST. Let's get to it. All right, we have this lovely 1040 ST. We're going to put this flash drive into the GoTech. It has, like I said, it has games, demos, and applications on it. The games are unzipped. The demos and applications, however, are still in a zip format because it takes a long time to unzip, to get them unzipped and then copy them onto the flash drive. It also allows me to make certain that I can fit it all on the flash drive. All right, so we're going into the auto boot section just to take a look at the stuff right here. So we have a number of different directories on this. We have the auto boot, the configuration files, the zipped applications, ST zip applications, zip demos. They will need to be unzipped and then put back onto this flash drive before they'll actually work. But we can go into ST games and we can pick a few things out here. What we're going to do now is we are going to boot up into Ultima 4 to begin with. Because the cool thing with Ultima 4 is it also outputs MIDI signals for music. A little bit of Space Quest here. But before we boot up into Space Quest, we have to set the music drivers. All right, what you see here, it's set currently as Atari ST3 voice. We want to select a different music device. We can select a synthesizer or a sound module, the MT32. We're going to select the MT32 because it sounds awesome. And then we install it as such. And then we boot up. And after we boot up, we enjoy the loveliness of the MT32.
as you can see, this lovely computer is pretty much ready to get sent off. It works perfectly. Now, the next thing I want to go on to is I'm going to get the Mega ST, bring it in, and we'll kind of go through that guy. The last guy I want to get put together and find a new home for. Not the last guy. Most recent guy. Besides this one. This one's going to find a new home. Mega ST is going to find another home. Okay, this Mega ST, if you saw my previous video when I first kind of diagnosed this guy, it works fine. However, or it worked fine, and it passed the Ultima 4 test. But what had happened is this is a real-time clock battery power, little battery slot area. There have been some batteries that have been left in here, and they did what batteries do when they're left in a computer or left in contact for a long period of time. They began to leak. Not only did they start to corrode the contacts in here, which I have since cleaned up with a lot of vinegar, a little bit of sanding and such, and they look pretty good in here. The problem is it started to leak onto, first off, the RF shielding and then onto the motherboard. So while the computer worked perfectly booting from the floppy disk drive, it had trouble from the cartridge, using the cartridge port. Actually, this is using the diagnostic cartridge. I couldn't get the diagnostic cartridge to work, nor could I get right underneath here, underneath this lovely area, is first the RF shield, and then underneath the RF shield, this section of the board, the motherboard, is connected to the ACSI, or ACSI, the hard ACSI, the hard drive port for the Atari the Mega ST. And so I couldn't get it to recognize hard drives, the UltraSatan at the time. I have spent quite a bit of time removing some of the solder mask, getting down to fixing some of the corroded traces. I didn't have to put any bodge wires in. I was able to simply just bridge over those traces with just some solder. The damage wasn't too extensive, but it was enough to cause issues, right? So I now have it so that it can recognize a hard drive. I also disconnected these terminals from the board just because they were so corroded. But they have an absolutely amazing keyboard. And because the keyboard, this is my Mega ST's keyboard. It's got cherry black switches. It has a fantastic feel. It's a really, really amazing keyboard. But because this keyboard is so amazing, the keyboards by themselves are generally separated from their Mega STs. Nowadays they are. In the past, they probably just got separated just because they were not connected to them, and so they got lost, damaged, destroyed, etc., thrown away, whatever. Nowadays, if you find a Mega ST, if someone were to find a Mega ST and a Mega ST keyboard, oftentimes, if they're selling them on eBay, they're just trying to flip it for a profit, what they will likely do is split them up because the keyboard itself is worth probably about as much as the computer is. So what do we do when we don't have a keyboard? Because my keyboard is with my, I'm not going to find a new home for my own keyboard, but there's a device called an Eiffel. And this Eiffel, what it does, takes the input from the computer, or connects to the computer via let's call it a straight phone line. We have standard joystick and mouse. So you have joystick 1, joystick 0. Joystick 0 is mouse. Joystick 1 is joystick. You have a keyboard, PS2 keyboard, and a PS2 mouse connector with a little bit of circuitry on here. Fine, wonderful, dandy. Works great, works like a charm. I don't have a case for it because of reasons. I would design a case. There isn't a case on Thingiverse at the moment for this style of Eiffel. I've had a different style of Eiffel before in the past that I actually designed a case and posted on Thingiverse for. Long story short, I decided, about a month ago, I don't like Windows anymore, and I want to now just run Linux on my main home computer. And I haven't found a good 3D modeling software package. I'm sure there's plenty that are out there. Put the comments in below any Linux 3D modeling software that's fantastic. I could probably use Wine to run the ones that I've done before in the past. But that said, I have not figured out my 3D modeling awesomeness to design a new case for this guy. So he's going commando right now. In addition to that, like I said, we have this 3D printed case. This was already designed by someone else, so I just printed it out. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. We have an SD card in here, and this is going to go with this guy. We have a lovely PS2 mouse. Nice, extremely simple, extremely basic. But what we'll simply do, let me do this. And we'll just plug it in here. Boom. Got that done. We have the PS2 keyboard. That's all tangled up with my straight through phone lined cord. Now, this cord here, the one thing that's, you have to be careful. Most telephone cords, at least in the United States, are reversed. They're flipped, right? So what you'll find, this is a straight through connector, and you need a straight through connector. Otherwise, you mix up some of the signals. If I can get this going. If I were to hold this out straight, if I can get this to work out. All right, there you go. This furthest most pin goes to this furthest most pin. This furthest right pin goes to this furthest right pin. They're perfectly aligned with each other. In a flipped cable, what you have is this pin on the furthest left is connected to the furthest right on this one. It's just that these connectors are flipped over. All right, simple as that. Don't use a flipped over cable with your Eiffel or your Atari ST Mega ST keyboard. That would be bad. Plug this in here, boom. We also have this is probably vintage 1999 to early 2000s PS2 keyboard, boom, here. A little bit of, interestingly, just a couple keys have yellowed, which I find it kind of ironic. Well, literally the door just rang, doorbell, and we had some EEPROMs arrive. Again, this is part keeping with the, I need a few more things to get the rest of the Atari STs up to snuff. Those EEPROMs will let me to allow me to program TOS 1.04 for those other computers, so we don't have to stick with TOS 1.0. TOS 1.0 is fine, but I figure if I'm going to be spending the time and effort to upgrade them, I might as well get that taken care of for it as well. In addition, oh, I am so stoked. We have a little bit of Roadcraft. This is such a fun game on the Amiga. I'm absolutely loving playing this. This is one of the retro games I'm playing quite a bit of. This has been really fun. It's a, if you haven't heard of this before, and you're interested in Amigas, take a look at this. This is a roguelike game, but with really cool, fun graphics, and it's actually got a pretty fun aesthetic to it. So we are good. Here is a 32 gigabyte MicroSD. Everything. I have all of the Pipera hard disk adapted games on this drive itself. So everything's on here. Not just one, not just two, but every single one is on here. Now, there will be some compatibility issues, and that's been the experience I've had so far myself, is that some games work, some software will work, some software will not. We just live with it as it is, because the functionality of, or the ease of using that is so awesome that it's worth it in some instances. Now, if you want to get more detailed compatibility, you can set up and partition the SD card with an Atari hard disk driver. That's totally fine. All right, so I'm going to plug in the joystick. We're going to plug in the hard drive, get the speakers on, and boot up. I've actually played another game, one of the games on here before. Let's get this, rather than an angle, let's get a better view. What you see here, this is all of the Pipera adapted to hard disk games. This usually is, I think it's about 1.5 gigabytes of total space. I usually have to spread it across between 3 and 4 500 megabyte disk images in order to keep, full folders together, right? My whole purpose is I like having things organized, all right? So we're going to, actually, let's not go into S. Let's go into, we need to go into U first, because the first thing I want to test is Ultima 4. And let's go up here, Ultima 4. And it appears like we're going to get a lovely Ultima 4 working. Beautiful. Ultima 4 works. We'll just do a Control-Alt-Delete, reboot, and then we're going to try another game. We're going to try 1943 next. And what we have here is 1490, or 1943, not 1492, 1943. All right. I'm not saying I'm the best at this game, but hey, nonetheless, we'll just get this working. I'm trying to remember which game I ran into that had issues. All right. As you can see, at least 2 of the games work just fine. Trying to remember what was the game that didn't want to work. Let's try Frontier Elite. Might have been Frontier Elite. Nope, Frontier Elite works. Wonderful. Or at least let's listen for a second. Yeah, it's working. I will try one more, because the fact is, this is a phenomenal option. This hard disk drive emulator is fantastic, right? As you can see, 3 out of 3 games worked perfectly. We'll check one more before I say I'm not going to try anymore. Let's go to Turrican 2. All right, so we are 4 for 4. I'm not saying that this is comprehensive by any stretch of the imagination, but it's working, and it works fantastically well. Again, back to my point earlier, this device here, let me get the one that's outside of its casing so you can actually see what it looks like. Oh, here it is. This device right here, highly recommended. I mean, I love the Ultra Satan, and I think it's, from a compatibility standpoint, is probably the best. I have yet to find, I mean, I found one game, I don't remember what it was, I don't recall, that had issues with this, but awesome, awesome, awesome device. All right. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed this time today, talking about the Atari ST, a bunch of other stuff, and hey, like, subscribe, come back for more if you'd like it. Have a fantastic day. Later.